Welcome to Newsmax TV. I'm Ashley Martella, and we're joined by Wall Street columnist and political journalist John Funn. Now, we've interviewed John in the past on the phone, but this time in person. It's nice to have you here, John.
Thank you, Ashley. A pleasure.
Okay. Rush Limbaugh, recent comments on Obama's agenda, socialist agenda. His words exactly, "I hope he fails." Do you agree with that, or do you tend to go along with those who say, let's give him a chance?
Well, if it's a socialist agenda, absolutely not. But I think it's unclear exactly how far Obama wants to go. Just remember, we've already had an enormous nationalization of much of our financial sector by the Bush administration. I think Barack Obama has probably figured out that didn't go very well, and perhaps we need to reevaluate it. Obama has already said that raising taxes in the middle of a recession, which we're in now, would not be a good idea, although Nancy Pelosi, the Democratic Speaker of the House, disagrees. So the Bush tax cuts are likely to remain in place for the first year or two of the Obama administration. There's going to be an enormous increase in spending, especially in infrastructure. I'm not in favor of that, but I don't think that fundamentally changes the very nature of our country. So we have to decide in the next few months whether Barack Obama that we elected is the liberal that he was when he voted in the Illinois State Senate and the United States Senate, or whether he's going to be more pragmatic, recognizing that the secret to his reelection is going to be to present a more moderate image and perhaps not move too quickly. Because recall, Jimmy Carter and Bill Clinton started out as Democratic presidents with a Democratic Congress. They let the Democratic Congress run away with too much of their agenda, moved in a liberal direction, and they both suffered humiliating midterm defeats in 1978 for Carter and 1994 for Clinton.
Okay, let's talk about now ex-President George Bush. There are some who say he abandoned conservative principles with his proposing the Medicare prescription drug benefits and the Wall Street banker bailout. Do you agree with that, sir?
President Bush did many things well. For one thing, I was at 9/11. I was at the World Trade Center when it collapsed. My office was across the street. If you had told me the day after 9/11 that we would not have had another terrorist attack on our homeland for 7.5 years, I would not have believed it. Most Americans wouldn't have believed it. He gets credit for that. He gets credit for the tax cuts, which spurred the growth and investment that we saw from 2003 to 2007. Where he fell down, I think, was partly because of the war. He decided that he was going to let Congress take control of the spending levers, and giving Congress control over spending without a check from the presidential veto pen is like giving teenagers car keys and a bottle of whiskey and asking them to behave. They're not going to do it. So I fault him on that. I also fault him on easy credit policies. He did nothing to stop the Federal Reserve from gushing out liquidity, and that frankly fueled the financial and housing manias that we saw, and now we're paying the price for those. And of course, although he did try to regulate Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, I think in retrospect, he should have done even more.
What does Obama's cabinet selections indicate to you about the direction he intends to take the country in?
Several things. One, I think he is not going to be a foreign policy president. He wants things to be as much as possible stable abroad. I think he is going to continue many of the Bush policies while trying to extricate himself from Iraq to satisfy the anti-war wing of his party. By keeping Secretary Gates on at the Pentagon, I think he's trying to signal continuity to our allies. I also think that he, in the domestic issues, it's a mixed bag. With the financial sector, I think he's tried to make reassuring appointments, people who are known and respected in the financial community. The nominee for Treasury Secretary, Mr. Geithner, Larry Summers, who's going to be the economic aide and advisor at the White House. I think he's trying to signal stability there as well. On some of the other sub-cabinet posts, labor, that was a sop to the labor unions. And it's going to be interesting how much his Labor Secretary, Hilda Solis, will push card check, which is the elimination of the secret ballot in union elections. On energy and the environment, it's a mixed bag. Carol Browner, who is going to be his chief environmental aide, is Bill Clinton's former Environmental Protection Agency director, and she has a very ambitious effort to try to curb carbon emissions, which is a danger because it can slow down our economy so much for very dubious and marginal benefit. I think in the teeth of this recession, that'll be one of Barack Obama's challenges. How much does he satisfy his environmental community versus how much does he try to maintain, kickstart economic growth because the country needs it?
And that's a death knell for offshore oil drilling?
I would predict that we are going to see offshore oil drilling in the next couple of years. And because it's Barack Obama who will be proposing it, the environmental community will have to swallow hard and accept it.
Interesting. All right, let's talk about Eric Holder for a second. That's one you didn't mention. What do you think that signals?
I think it signals that every president who takes office wants someone of the Justice Department who will watch their back, someone they can communicate with, who will understand the political nuances, and will follow the appropriate political signals. Bush had that with Alberto Gonzales, which did not prove very well. Janet Reno was not that kind of an attorney general, and I think that bad experience that Bill Clinton had with Janet Reno, whom he barely knew when he nominated her, I think has convinced Barack Obama he needed someone he could trust and would be reliable. Eric Holder certainly has shown in his career that he will follow signals from the White House.
Okay, let's talk about some Republican senators now. Lindsey Graham, the retiring Noel Martinez, Dick Lugar, and former Senator Chuck Hagel. In your opinion, they're cozying up to Obama. Are they just being sycophants, or do you really think they've undergone a fundamental change in ideology?
I think it's a recognition of Obama's high approval ratings. Dick Lugar is flattered that Barack Obama apparently took some direction from him on foreign policy. Lindsey Graham is trying to broaden his outlook to become a senator that I think the mainstream media can appreciate. Chuck Hagel has left the Senate. I don't think he's a factor anymore. I think he always was hostile to the Bush administration's policies in Iraq. He probably, during all of his tours of duty with Obama in Iraq, probably became friendly with him. I think you are going to see some Republican rhinos cozy up to Obama, but a lot of this is predicated on his approval ratings. If approval ratings are high, Republicans will be fearful to confront Obama. If they start to slip, the economy doesn't recover, eventually the economy will be viewed as Obama's problem, not Bush's legacy. And I think Republicans, just as they did with Clinton, will find a stiffer spine.
Do you think among the Republicans we just mentioned, and maybe Collins and Snow in Maine and Specter in Pennsylvania, do you think one of them or several of them can easily be picked off when it comes to a filibuster?
Depends on the issue. On the issue of card check, which is elimination of secret ballots for union elections, both Snow and Collins were very tough on that because it became a sine qua non of the business community's support for candidates. Arlen Specter did vote for card check. I suspect it may depend on whether or not Arlen Specter has to have that vote before the Republican primary next spring in 2010 or after. I think Arlen Specter will be on the fence, but I still think there are also some moderate Democrats on that issue who will vote against card check because unions aren't popular in their states, such as Arkansas, for example.
One columnist recently wrote that he thinks Obama is trying to seduce weak-kneed Republicans in order to facilitate and advance his agenda.
Doing a good job of it. He's doing a good job of it. Look, I know one Republican senator who's not a senior member who's gotten 5 phone calls from President-elect Obama. 5 phone calls. That's more than some leaders of President Bush's own party got from him during the time that he was in the White House. I think Obama is playing this very well. I think he has run a very, very effective transition team, including outreach to conservatives. That dinner that he had with leading conservatives such as George Will was very, very significant. It's even worrying some Democrats, but I think Obama understands that he is going to have a much bigger agenda than just the first few 100 days or so of economic stimulus. He's going to have to move on to health care and other issues. If he riles Republicans, if he breaks trust with Republicans early on, he's going to find it much more difficult when the going gets rough and those approval ratings inevitably come down, as they will. I think he's trying to build political capital for the future by reaching out in a way that previous presidents haven't.
Ron Brownstein writes of a blue wall. He says the Democrats have built a bastion of political strength, the likes of which we haven't seen since FDR Truman era. Do you agree with him?
Well, I can remember 4 years ago there was a book published by 2 liberal journalists who said the Republicans had built an impregnable political machine under Karl Rove's direction that was going to cement a governing Republican majority. Not. That didn't happen. I'm very, very leery of historical determinism. I think in an era in which party loyalty is less than ever, people aren't wedded to the party necessarily of their parents, I think it's much more fluid. If the party in power fails, if it's seen not as addressing the legitimate concerns of the American people, they can lose adherence very quickly. This is not something that takes a generation to happen. It can take a 2-year election cycle. I'll give you an example. In 1994, Bill Clinton wins. Huge Democratic majorities in Congress. 2 years later, they get tossed out in incredible repudiation. 2004, Bush wins election. Republicans gain 55 Senate seats. They have solid control of the House. 2 years later, the economy is not in trouble then. It's just mostly Iraq. The Iraq War is going badly. What happens? The Republicans lose 6 seats in the Senate. They lose control. They lose control of the House of Representatives by losing 30 seats. That's all in the space of 2 years.
So that blue wall is not impenetrable as far as you can...
It's a blue screen.
Blue screen.
It's not a wall.
Okay. John Fund, thanks very much for joining us here at Newsmax. Come back soon.
Thanks.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.